Hi, today we're going to be discussing Chapter 13 and using visual aids with your speeches. I'm going to show you a PowerPoint here, and please feel free to email me with any questions, or if you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint, I can send that to you as an attachment via email. The advantages of using visual aids are that they add clarity to your speech, they grab the interest of your audience, they retain the interest of your audience, it gives you credibility, and it's a very good tool to use in a persuasive speech. Different kinds of visual aids are objects, models, photos, drawings, graphs, charts, transparencies, video, multimedia presentations, which are visual PowerPoints such as this one. And if you're doing a demonstration speech, the speaker, you yourself, could be the visual aid. Some things to keep in mind about the different visual aids that I just mentioned. If you're going to use a model or an object, it needs to be big enough for your entire audience to see it. Keep in mind that this is an online class, which means I am part of your audience. Your object must be large enough for me to be able to see your object. We're going to be skimming through some of this PowerPoint. I want to touch on the most important things to remember when you're choosing your visual aid. Some tips for using photographs. A lot of you have been doing photographs for your visual aids, and you're just holding up just the small photo, just a small 4x6 photo, and that's not large enough. It needs to be large enough so that your entire audience can see it. Blow it up. You can put it on a transparency. You can integrate it into a PowerPoint. One thing that you never want to do is pass your visual aid around the room, no matter what it is, no matter if it's an object or a photograph. It takes the attention off of you and it puts the focus on your visual aid. So instead of them looking at you, they're looking at the visual aid that's being passed around the room. If you're going to use a drawing, it's much like a photo. So if you're artistic and you want to draw your visual aid, that's fine, but make sure that it is large enough too so that it can be seen. Just drawing a stick figure on a piece of paper and holding it up is not going to be sufficient enough for to qualify as your visual aid. There's an example of a drawing. Here's another example of a drawing that somebody did for a speech on dyslexia. If you look at it closely, it says this is what a person with dyslexia might see when reading this sentence, and that's a very effective way to emphasize his point on dyslexia. So make sure that you're choosing your visual aids wisely. Graphs are good to show statistical trends and patterns. You can implement these in PowerPoints. You can put them on transparencies. You can put them on a poster board and bring them in, as long as your visual aid is large enough. That's the main thing that you need to keep in mind. Different kinds of graphs. A line graph. There's an example of one. A pie graph. Bar graph. A chart, transparencies. Use a transparency, make sure you prepare them in advance and make sure they're large enough, and make sure that you're checking the projector ahead of time to make sure that all your equipment works. Video is another way that you can, another visual aid that you can use, but you have to be very careful when using video for your visual aid. Use only when it's essential. It must be short. You can't play a 3-minute video on a 4-minute speech. I want more of you, not the video. And it must be integrated into your speech. Make sure the quality is good. If you're going to use a video, I would contact me to get advice and to get help and to see if it's going to be appropriate, because videos can be, although it may sound easy, like a video would be an easy visual aid, they actually are very difficult to do. You have to know when to play it, how to talk while your video is playing, and how to use transitions between the video and your speaking. So that takes some practice. So if you're going to use a video, make sure that you practice with it a lot so that it flows well between your speaking and the video. Multimedia presentation, which is probably the most common visual aid, is a PowerPoint, and it combines several different audio-visual materials. PowerPoint's very easy to use, and it's in a very effective way to show pictures, show graphs, put text up. So I would strongly advise in any of your speeches that require a visual aid to think about doing a PowerPoint as are very effective. If you're going to use the speaker as a visual aid, it's using your body as to demonstrate the procedure, and you must practice to coordinate your words and actions. This would only be appropriate in a demonstration speech, which we are not doing in an online class, but just for future reference, if you ever do need to use a demonstration speech, your body is a very effective source to use. Going back to the PowerPoint, if you're going to do a PowerPoint, there are some things to keep in mind. One, make sure it's not too busy. Look at the screen here, and you see one simple kind of font. You see minimal colors. You don't want your screen to be too busy because it will distract from what you're saying. If you're going to use pictures, keep them simple and make sure they're large enough so that your entire audience can see it. Make sure your words are large enough so that your audience can see your words on there. Don't use fancy font. Don't use a bunch of different size fonts. Don't change the color of your font too often. Keep it very simple. So make sure that when you do your PowerPoint, make sure you go through and look at it and project it up on something large and see if what it's going to look like to your audience when you do your visual aid. If you're going to do a PowerPoint for your visual aid, when you're recording it, you can do something like what I'm doing now. You can get really close to the computer screen and make sure it's zoomed in enough so that I can clearly see your visual aid up on the screen. I can see the words. I can see the pictures that you put up. Some things that won't work for visual aids are just simple objects. We did a personal object speech where you could bring in just something very simple, just an object. And when we get to the speeches that require a visual aid, you need to put more effort into your visual aid than just holding up one object. A visual aid is to enhance your speech. It's to exemplify your central idea and back up what you're saying. So really put a lot of thought into your visual aid and ask yourself, is this going to add to my speech? Is this going to clarify what I'm going to try to say? Is this going to make my speech more powerful? So I hope this helps. If you have any questions about your visual aids, please feel free to contact me and I'd love to help you out. But when we get to the speeches that require visual aids, they're worth more points. So please make sure you put a lot of thought and effort into what visual aid that you use. So I will talk to you all soon.